Hi folks, it's good to see you again. Today we're starting chapter number 6, which is titled Developmental Psychology. And a bit of a surprise here, if you think back to our original definition of psychology, that it's the science of mind and behavior, you may recall in there that the word abnormal never appeared, even though lots of folks in daily life think of psychologists as therapists, because some of us, or some of them, are. But psychology deals with all behavior, which includes the normal, and developmental psychology is the branch of psychology that's interested in normal people. So in fact, developmental psychology does focus on how the typical person, how a normal person changes over time as the result of the interaction of heredity and the environment. In fact, if you stop and think about it for a moment, that's all that there is that can affect development. There's heredity, what you got from mom and dad, and everything else. And everything else is the world around us, including the family in which we were raised, the community, the nation in which we were raised, the religious group, if any, an ethnic group, and then, of course, a national group. I put the Greek letter psi in there just because I thought it was cute, because it's oftentimes used as an abbreviation for psychology. And you can see where it comes in the Greek alphabet also. It's next to last. Let's take a look now at a couple of the continuing controversies in this area of developmental psychology. The first controversy I mentioned a little while ago, it's the heredity versus the environment controversy. The question there being, which is more powerful? Is it the genes that we got from mom and dad that causes us to become who we are, or is it how we were brought up? Or perhaps some combination of the two. The truth is it varies depending upon the special area within developmental psychology that we're looking at, because we develop in different ways, physically, emotionally, socially, cognitively. Another continuing controversy in developmental psychology is, what's the best way to describe it, in the sense of the most accurate way to describe it? Do we change gradually? In other words, continuously, and in a way that's hard to notice because the change is so gradual? Or, in the alternative, do we change in a discontinuous manner, which is just a big fancy word for saying, do we go through changes? And the truth is that there, too, the best descriptor depends upon the type of change we're looking at. If we looked at vocabulary, that tends to grow gradually during adolescence and adulthood. But when we're 3, 4, 5 years old, we go through a stage where we learn about 10 to 12 words, new words a minute. 10 to 12 words a day just from hearing them used around us. Don't you wish college were so easy? In terms of other stages, you and I, we're all adults now, biologically speaking. That means each of us can do half of the business of making another human being. We're not children. A child is a person who is younger than puberty, and they're not yet able to do half of the business of making a new person. So biologically speaking, a person becomes an adult when they're about 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 years old nowadays. But does that make us an adult in every way? I think you would agree, no. You'll recall that earlier in the course we spent an entire chapter taking a look at research. In developmental psychology, we add 2 new research techniques to those that we took a look at earlier. Let's take a look at those now. The first additional technique in the area of developmental psychology is what's called longitudinal research. Now, these 2 methods, this is the easier to understand. In fact, if you take a look at the first syllable, L-O-N-G, that spells long, of course, and what we're doing is following some individual person or group of persons over some long period of time and observing how they change. Let's take a look at and contrast the longitudinal method with the cross-sectional method. Let's do an example, taking a look at longitudinal research first. Suppose you were studying something such as children learning how to read in elementary school. You'd follow the same kids throughout their entire elementary school career, grades 1 to 5. How long is it going to take you to do this study where they learn how to read? Easy. It's going to take you 5 years. That's a lot of time if you're a researcher who's trying to get some research done. That makes this method really quite difficult to do. And during that 5 years living in the dear old US of A, how many of these students are going to move away? And then you've got to go and find them wherever they are in the country or perhaps in the world. This method gives you very high quality research if you can keep track of the people, but it's very expensive in terms of time and effort. But what if you could get good quality research results, perhaps not as strong as with the longitudinal method, much more quickly? That would be great from a practical point of view. In that case, you might want to consider the cross-sectional approach. Let's take a look at that now for the same example, children learning how to read in grade school. So perhaps you'd go over to Stafford Elementary School where they've got 1st through 5th grade on a Monday morning. And at 8 o'clock you do the 1st grade. At 9 o'clock you do the 2nd graders across the hall. 3rd graders at 10, 4th graders 11, and the 5th graders at 12 noon. And you're done in 5 hours. Wow, cross-sectional method's much faster. You get good results. But are there some weaknesses for this method too? Yes, there are some potential weaknesses for this method too. For example, the kiddos in 1st grade and 5th grade may have some different historical events. The kiddos who are now in the 5th grade, perhaps when they were in the 1st grade, that's when the pandemic was going on and they missed 2 months of school in the 1st grade. But none of the other kids did. They had a different history. And so perhaps if the 5th graders are only reading as well as the 4th graders, maybe it's not because they're mentally slow or because children stop developing between 4th and 5th grade. Maybe it's because the kiddos missed out on part of their formal education. So in this short video, we've taken a look at some introductory ideas related to developmental psychology. We took a look at a definition of the field, and we took a look at 2 different research techniques, additional techniques used in developmental psychology, namely longitudinal method and the cross-sectional method. Take care now and have a great psychology day.
That's all, folks.